I won an auction for these. They are two French Gras Model 1874 rifles. They're single-shot black powder rifles, the successor to the needle-fire Chassepot rifle from 1866, and the predecessor to the revolutionary Lebel rifle of 1886. Actually, this one on top started life as a Chassepot and was later converted to a Gras. I got these for cheap because they're both missing one vital component. Their bolts. Well, the cleaning rods are missing too, but those aren't as critical as a bolt is. Without a bolt, these can't be fired, which was the goal of my auction purchase in this video, to be able to fire at least one of these. That was almost a year ago. I kept my eye out for a bolt. I searched parts websites. I posted wanted ads. I set saved searches and alerts on auction websites, but I couldn't find one. At least not one in decent condition, the right configuration, and for the right price. So I bought this instead. This is from Royal Tiger Imports, a place I told myself I wouldn't order from again. But I'm still on their mailing list, so when I saw C-grade rifles were I rolled the dice. And this is what I received. It's a typical Ethiopian import, dirty, rusty, crusty. It's missing the rear sight. There's Ethiopian script carved into it. The bore is probably trash, and of course it's missing a cleaning rod as well. But there is a complete and functional bolt. So again, the goal of this video is to make one complete and functional Gras rifle out of now these three. First, I'll do some rearranging in order to take a closer look at what is likely the worst of the three, the C-grade Ethiopian import. Through the crud on the stock, you can just make out the round L here. The stock actually isn't in too bad of shape. It's just extremely dirty. Until you get to the middle band, then there's wood missing at the barrel line. In addition to the bolt, there's also the screw here, which is missing on the other two Gras. I'll take a closer look at the bolt by itself in a bit. Moving down, this was made in 1880. There's where the rear sight would have been. For some reason, the Ethiopians removed these on a lot of their rifles. And here are their markings. Not sure what this means. There's a lot of wear at the muzzle, especially with the long bayonet lug. You can see all the corners are worn down and rounded off. This lives a hard life, like a lot of Ethiopian rifles did. Let's take a look at the other side. There's the same wear on the opposite side of the muzzle. Between the bands, the wood dips down. And there's a piece of what looks like cloth. Actually, it's stuck. Below where the rear sight should be is the serial number. R, I believe that's an S. 17059. Above are some markings indicating the steel supplier and the arsenal inspectors. There's a large dip in the wood under the receiver. As far as the markings go, there's M80 here. Above it is the arsenal, Tule, and Model 1874, Gras. And on the buttstock should be a serial number engraved vertically, but there's no hint of it remaining. The most interesting thing on this rifle is underneath. There's something embedded in the wood here. Some sort of metal, but it's not magnetic. I'll let you speculate as to what that could be. Next, I'll remove the bolt, starting with the bolt stop screw. The bolt is very dirty, but it is complete. All of the parts are there. I'll get it disassembled. The firing pin should come right out under spring pressure, but it needs some help. That's the bolt disassembled. Actually, the extractor is still in the bolt head. That's the bolt fully disassembled. With how dirty the parts are, they need some cleaning up. This is simple green, and this bag will go into the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll run a few cycles in order to get all of these parts clean. The parts are out of the ultrasonic, and they look like they're pretty clean. Here's a quick look at the solution. It's more of a sewage color than the bright green it started off as. But with as clean as these parts are now, they're prone to rusting. I'll spray them down with some ballistol and wipe away the excess to leave a film behind. With all of the bolt parts cleaned and oiled, I can begin to put it back together. And I think I see a problem here. The firing pin is bent, not the tip, where a bend would usually occur, but the body of it. That's why it was stuck in the bolt body earlier. That bolster should fit down within the body, but it's off to one side. Here you can see how the bend rotates as I turn the firing pin. Or perhaps this is a better way to show the bend. Putting a straight edge to it, you can see the back end sticking up. Now the firing pin is a shallow arch shape. The bend looks to be around my ring finger. With the back end up again, I can tell that the bend is concentrated right around here, say 1.5 inches from the end. I'll try and straighten it out. I'll set it up vertically in the vise and try to position it so that the jaws are right below the bend, with the bend facing me. Rather than try and straighten it with a hammer which may not concentrate the bend in this area, but up around here. I have this piece of steel rod that in one end I drilled a hole the size of the firing pin. It slips over and will concentrate the bend in the small area that's already bent. That moved very easily thanks to the long leverage, but it looks like it needs to go a touch further. This looked fine in person, but looking back at the video, I could have gone a bit further. The firing pin doesn't need to be perfectly straight. It only needs to fit within the bolt body and be able to move freely without any binding. This looks good to me. After that detour, I can now reassemble the bolt. I'll use a generous amount of oil to keep everything well lubricated. And as you can see, there's no more binding of the firing pin. I added the bolt head too soon. The extractor needs to be fit first. Just need to get it into the right position. It needs to sit all the way within the bolt head. Then the bolt head can be rotated the correct way. And that's the bolt reassembled. I'll set it aside. The bolt is likely the only part I'll reuse from the Ethiopian rifle. I'll get it moved back so that I can bring the other two forward. To make things easier in this next segment, even though both of these are Gras rifles, I'll refer to this one as the Gras, and this is a Chassepot, since that's what they each started life off as. I'll do an overview of both to find out which I want to add the bolt to in order to make a shooter. Right off the bat, the metal finish on the Chassepot looks nicer than on the Gras. However, the stock maybe isn't. There's quite a few areas like this one. Deep gouges with missing wood. That doesn't mean the Gras stock is perfect. It looks like it was coated in some sort of glossy finish that's now turning blotchy. Back to the metal. The Gras has pitting right at the wood line, all the way down the barrel. It's most noticeable here. While on the Chassepot, there's no pitting and the bluing is intact. Both rear sights have issues. The Chassepot's lower leaf is bent at the end, but the adjustment still works. It may be as simple as bending it back into place. On the Gras, the 300-meter notch is missing. Though the sliding leaf is tight at first, it's loose at the top. But both sights can be folded forwards for the 200-meter notch that I'd likely be using while shooting. Note that the sights are different between the two. On the Gras, note the serial number, starting with a script letter L, while the Chassepot serial starts with a block letter C. That's one way to tell this started life as a Chassepot. The other, of course, is the Model 1866-74 on the receiver. This was made at the Châtelet Arsenal. Below is the M80 update marking. The Gras was purpose-built as a Gras, with the Model 1874 marking It was made at the Saint Etienne Arsenal, and below, it was also updated to the M80 standard. The stock isn't matching. On the Chassepot, the numbers are harder to make out. 2, 8, 5. That's not matching either. I think I know what I'm going to do with these, but I'll get them flipped around so I can take a look at the other side. On the butt plate, the Gras has a unit marking, 130T. If there's any on the Chassepot, it's obscured by rust. Looking at the buttstocks, there's more of the glossy finish, with areas missing or worn away. The plug is there, but the roundel around it has the outline just barely visible. On the Chassepot, it's obscured, only the plug is visible. Moving forward to the receivers, I said earlier that both of these were also missing the bolt retaining screw. I'll need to reuse the one from the Ethiopian rifle. At the front of the receiver, you can see the gas vent channel that was part of the M80 update that all three of the rifles received. On the Gras, there's more pitting at the wood line. Above is the date of production, 1880. The Chassepot was made in 1872. Closer to the muzzle is where I can find the only hint of pitting along the wood line. First is the Gras, which is pretty much the length of the barrel. Neither bayonet lug has the edges worn and rounded off as much as the Ethiopian rifle did, but the edges of the Chassepot are much more crisp. Also, note how the front sight is a bit taller compared to the front sight of the Gras. The outside condition of these rifles is important, but I want a shooter, and for that, I need to look at the bore condition. Starting with the Gras, its bore is dark and dirty, but I do see rifling. It would need a good cleaning to determine its exact condition. The bore on the Chassepot, however, is pretty clean. The rifling is distinct, definitely an above average bore for a rifle this old. Just for fun, I'll bring in the Ethiopian to take a look at its bore. As expected, it's dark. I can't make out anything. Adding a light. I can't see rifling, but I can't tell if there's pitting throughout, or if it's just dirt. But as a whole, the Ethiopian rifle is clearly the worst of the three overall. I'll set it aside. I think it's obvious which is best, and will make a better shooter. That's the Chassepot conversion. The bore is by far the best. The metal condition is better, with even bluing and little to no pitting. The only hesitation I have is the stock. This side looks fairly good. It was the other side that had that deep gouge. On the underside is another gouge, in addition to the one seen earlier, along with some deep dents that look to be 1 pound of force away from being gouges themselves. I'm not concerned with any of the smaller dings and dents that are present all along the stock. It's those gouges that interrupt what would be a perfectly good stock with good color to it. On the other hand, the Gras stock is in better condition. I think what I want to do is to see how the Gras stock would look without the glossy finish. I'll disassemble the Gras down to the stock. You can see there's pitting all along the underside of the receiver and the barrel, and there's a few spots of heavier rust. However, the inlining of the stock looks to be in good condition. I'll continue to strip it of the metal parts until it's down to the wood alone. Out of all the parts removed from the Gras, I think the only one worth saving is the butt plate. Though it's rusty, the Chassepot butt plate was worse. I think this will clean up nicely with some steel wool and oil. The butt plate is looking a lot better after some elbow grease. I'll get the rest of the parts out of the way, since I won't be needing them. Then I'll turn my attention to the wood stock and the shiny finish added to it. I'll first use denatured alcohol to attempt to remove it. I'm not sure how well it will work. Some areas have a heavy coat, like here on the wrist where there's some drips, but I'll give it a shot before moving to more aggressive methods if need be. The denatured alcohol seemed to soften the finish. Varnish, shellac, poly, whatever it is. But it's too thick for the alcohol to remove it completely. I'll move on to something more aggressive. Citrus strip. This should remove the shiny finish, without impacting the wood beneath too much. I'll apply a heavy coat and let it sit to do its job. After just a few minutes, the finish is bubbling off. I'll leave this for around an hour to make sure all the old finish has been removed. I went back, applied another coat, and waited another hour. The bubbling seems to have stopped, which means it's time to remove the excess. For that, I'll use a plastic knife that I ground the teeth down on. This won't scrape the wood. After wiping off the citrus strip, I took the stock outside and gave it a gentle bath with dish soap and water to make sure that all the stripper has been removed. Then let it dry overnight. The wood is very dry looking. To bring back the color and add protection, I'll apply a coat of boiled linseed oil. With how it looks, the stock should soak this right up. Once fully coated, I'll hang the stock up to dry. I'll add a few more coats over the next few days. In the meantime, I'll set the Gras barreled action aside and get the Chassepot disassembled. With all of the parts removed from the Chassepot, I can take the extra parts, the Gras action, and the Chassepot stock, and join them together in order to make a parts rifle. I'll spare the details of assembling that. And here it is. I'll set it aside alongside the Ethiopian rifle. Then I can take a closer look at the Chassepot barreled action. The underside of it is much different than the Gras barrel. There's not even a hint of rust or pitting at all. What there is a lot of, though, are markings. All sorts of proofs, serial numbers, and assembly numbers. And I'm reminded of the bent rear sight. I'll move the barreled action to the vise in order to straighten it out. You can see how the lower leaf is bent downwards, just beyond the sight base. I'll start by removing the adjustable leaf. To get it off, I remove the 300-meter notch. Then it lifts off. Then to bend the leaf, I'll squeeze it with these pliers wrenches. Just squeezing it doesn't get the leaf flat. For that, I'll need to overbend slightly so that it springs back flat. Looking at the sight leaf, it's fairly straight now. A bit wavy at the bottom, but that's close enough. I'll reassemble it back together. Testing it out. I'm not liking how loose the adjustable leaf is, both side to side and front to back. This is a problem because it'll likely move around under recoil. The 300-meter notch is supposed to apply some pressure onto the adjuster, resisting movement, but there's a gap. I can fit a 15 thousandths feeler gauge in there. I think removing some material from the underside of the notch, minimizing the gap, will help put more pressure onto the adjuster. So that I can do it precisely, I'll set it up in the mill. I'll touch off the bottom of the notch. Then reset the Z-axis on the DRO, and raise the knee just below 15 thousandths. That looks good there. Then I'll simply feed across. Removing material does lower the 300-meter notch. I'm not concerned though, because I'll be doing most of my shooting at 50 or 100 yards. With most military rifles of this era shooting high at their minimum sight setting, lowering the rear sight is a good thing. The adjustable leaf is a lot stiffer to move than before, and there doesn't seem to be any play when extended. It won't move around under recoil. With the rear sight fixed, the barreled action is set. It doesn't need anything else fixed, nor does it even need to be cleaned. And it's been a few days, and here is the stock. It's been a very hot couple of days, and I've left the stock out in the sun while oiling. This really opened up the pores and allowed the wood to soak up the BLO. You can see that the color got a lot darker. Now I can finally assemble the completed rifle. For screws and the band springs that will go into the stock, I'll first give them a coat of paste wax. The wax will provide lubrication, making them easier to go in, and also easier to come back out later. Next I'll add the bolt that will complete the rifle. I'll just get the cocking piece in the correct orientation first. Last is the bolt stop screw, but before I add it, note the track on the bolt body that the screw tip rides in, and the stop at the bolt head that prevents it from being removed with the screw set in place. The bolt seems to be functioning properly now, with the firing pin straightened out. That's the rifle complete. With it all together now, I can call it simply the Gras. It seems to have turned out well. Though the metal needed minimal work, the stock turned out much better than expected. I'm not concerned about mixing and matching parts, since noted earlier, the serial numbers weren't matching anyway. But with this complete, what do I do with the other rifles? The Ethiopian did its job providing the bolt, and the rest will go back into the far corner of the safe. Though the other Gras is in rough shape, it has some potential as a future restoration project, provided I find another bolt to go with it. What's next for this Gras, though? There's only one thing left to do, of course, and that's to shoot it. Let's head to the range. This is what I'll be shooting. I did have to turn the necks for them to be able to chamber. I made the cases from 5110 brass, and I thickened the rim by about 10 thousandths, though I'm not sure if that's necessary. Before I shoot though, I need to remember to fold the rear sight forward for its lowest setting. Then I can fire this rifle's first shot, in who knows how long. The rim on the 5110 brass is a bit undersized, so the extractor loses grip of it about halfway through the bolt cycle. But the fired brass looks good to me. Sorry for being out of focus here. I have 9 more to shoot. Before the last shot, I'll move the chronograph over to where you can see it. That was 1,264 feet per second. The average is 1,268, with not much variation in spread. As for the target, I was only shooting at 50 yards. Looks like the elevation was good. Some variation left to right, but that's just me. Those two on the left side of the 8 ring look like they could be keyholes, but I think each are 2 bullets hitting. That's the Gras complete. It certainly was a roundabout way of getting a complete and functional Gras rifle, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks for watching.